Attorney General Jeff Sessions resigns. Jim Acosta shoves a female White House aide. Leftists on Twitter become extremely racist. And we will be going over some midterm elections and where they stand right now. Starting off today, we're going to be talking about Attorney General Jeff Sessions and his resignation from that position. This is really no surprise because if you've been following this, anything going on in the news over the past 2 years, you would know that Jeff Sessions was basically hanging from a cliff ever since he recused himself from the Russia investigation once it started and gave full authority to Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who is extremely crooked. I mean, this dude talked about wiretapping the President of the United States, which is illegal, and actually there are some investigations going on regarding Rosenstein. Anyway, going back to Jeff Sessions. Other than the fact that he recused himself, President Trump still tweeted out at him back on August 1st, stating that, he needs to do something about this rigid witch hunt, and that he's not, Jeff Sessions isn't doing enough, and just slamming him. And then Jeff Sessions, replied to these statements with the following, and this is from an article from CNN. It states, "While I am Attorney General, the actions of the Department of Justice will not be improperly influenced by political consideration. I demand the highest standards, and where they are not met, I take action." I believe Jeff Sessions did a good job as an AG. There's some things I disagree with him on as far as his stance on drugs and things like that. But overall, I think he did a good job at overseeing the Department of Justice. And I think that what he said here, in response to when President Trump said he's scared stiff and missing in action, accusing that of Jeff Sessions, his response, I think, was very well put. And he is correct in that they shouldn't be getting involved in political actions. And actually, President Trump acknowledged this today in the press conference, stating that he wouldn't fire Mueller because it wouldn't be good for him politically, which is 100% correct. And it would definitely hurt him going into the 2020 election. So this is, like I said, not something too surprising to most of us. But what is a little more surprising, I would say, is that the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, was seen going to the White House today as well. There's pictures of him on Twitter going to the White House, and there's also speculation that he will be resigning too within the next 48 hours. So then that begs the question, who's going to be the acting AG? Well, that's going to be Matthew G. Whitaker, and he was actually appointed U.S. Attorney General for the Southern District of Iowa under the Bush administration back in 2004. He was put to that position, and then in 2009 he stepped down when President Barack Obama appointed Nicholas Knefelet to that position. Now, there have been a lot of talk about Whitaker and what he will do with the Russia investigation, especially since he wrote an article back in, I believe, 2017, stating that the Mueller investigation has gone too far. And essentially what the article was about is that the Mueller investigation has stretched out into different areas in which he doesn't have jurisdiction to investigate in, like obstruction of justice for James Comey, the financial situations going on. And what he said in that article is that they just need to limit the scope of his investigation into just the Russia collusion to see if they can find any evidence on that, which they haven't thus far. But people are suggesting, especially people on the left, are suggesting that now the acting Attorney General, Matthew G. Whitaker, is actually going to fire Mueller, although President Trump said he wasn't going to do that today, and he acknowledged this would hurt him politically. So we'll see exactly where this unfolds. This all happened super quickly. We knew that there would be some cabinet shaking up happen after the midterms, but damn, not the next day, and definitely not within, I think it was an hour, literally, after the press conference that Jeff Sessions gave his resignation. So things are happening quickly right now, especially after the midterms. Now, moving on to the press conference that President Trump held today, and when he opened it up to Q&A, it was a little chaotic. And I will add this. I actually have never watched a full press conference or a Q&A before until today, because I want to do a really good job at what I'm doing and make sure that I understand the situation in its entirety, so that way I can relay the information to you guys, without missing anything. So today I was listening to this, and so the reason I said what I said at the beginning is because it seemed very chaotic, the Q&A section of this press conference. And to start things off with this getting really hectic was when Jim Acosta from CNN started to ask President Trump a question, and I will let you all listen to how that turned out.
Statements that you made in the tail end of the campaign in the midterms.
Here we go.
If you don't mind, Mr. President, that this caravan was an invasion. As you know, Mr. President,
I consider it to be an invasion.
As you know, Mr. President, the caravan was not an invasion. It's a group of migrants moving up from Central America towards the border with the U.S.
Thank you for telling me.
And why did you characterize it as such?
Because I consider it an invasion. You and I have a difference of opinion.
But do you think that you demonized immigrants in this election
to
try to keep...
I want them to come into the country, but they have to come in legally. They have to come in, Jim, through a process.
I just want to stop it right here, because I want to add, as you can see, they are obviously trying to continue that division that's taken part in our country right now. And this is right after President Trump has congratulated soon-to-be Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, for the win of taking back the House, and stating that he agrees with Nancy Pelosi in that there needs to be bipartisanship and we need to be united as a nation and try to fix the rift that's occurred right now. But as you can see, the media definitely plays a role in trying to divide us. So I'll keep this going.
I want it to be a process, and I want people to come in, and we need the people.
Your campaign.
Wait. You know why we need the people, don't you? Because we have hundreds of companies moving in. We need the people.
Your campaign had an ad showing migrants climbing over walls and so on.
True.
But
they weren't actors.
They're not going to be doing that.
They weren't actors. Well, no, it's true. Do you think they were actors? They weren't actors. They didn't come from Hollywood. These were people. This was an actual. It happened a few days ago, and
they're hundreds of miles away. Though they're hundreds and hundreds of miles away. That's not an invasion.
Honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN,
right.
And if you did it well, your ratings would be much better.
If I may ask one other question, Mr. President, right? If I may ask one other question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President,
that's enough.
Ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr. President,
that's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other question, if I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have?
I'm not concerned about anything with the Russian investigation because it's a hoax. That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation?
All right. So I don't know if you all heard, but when Jim Acosta said, "Excuse me, ma'am," that's when the White House aide, after President Trump said that that's enough, no more questioning from you, and was going to the next person, he continued to speak. And so the White House aide got up, tried to remove the microphone from his hand because that's her job, and Jim Acosta pushed her away. Some people are saying he assaulted her. I think that's way too far, and I don't believe that to be the case. I just think that he was extremely rude and forceful in trying to maintain control over President Trump and trying to bully Trump into answering his questions, which then President Trump responded, I think, very beautifully in, maintaining control of the press conference without letting it get chaotic. And, he kind of walked away from the microphone, ignoring what Jim Acosta was saying, and then, kept saying, "All right, that's enough. Sit down. That's enough from you." I think he did a good job at maintaining control, and I think that was a good move as a leader on his part. That's my opinion, of course, but I definitely think that he handled it very well. And now, shortly after this incident right here with Jim Acosta, another CNN reporter, April Ryan, got up and started shouting questions at President Trump. And this is why I said it was chaotic, because there was numerous people who did this. And she was just the very next person after, not the very next person, but shortly after Jim Acosta's incident, she stood up and then started yelling something at President Trump, trying to ask him questions. I couldn't really hear it from where I was watching it. And President Trump, once again, I think handled the situation very well, just telling her, hey, no, sit down. Nobody asked you any questions. And, nobody asked you to answer any questions. I didn't call on you or anything like that, so it's not your turn. And she actually interrupted another reporter who was trying to question President Trump and who he called on. So she was trying to overpower another reporter, but, the press are supposed to stay together, just like all women are supposed to stay together, just like we're all supposed to stay together, unless you go against the left's narrative. So I think the press conference, the Q&A section at least, was a little chaotic at first, and I don't think it did anything to help the divide in our country. And I think actually there was a nefarious agenda on the left's behalf to try to further the divide and try to manipulate President Trump's words and just try to make him look like a bad person. And he did, I think, a good job at holding his ground and being as presidential as you can in that kind of circumstance. However, I do have to add that during his opening statements, the first 20 minutes, he had a speech. And in that speech, he did end up calling out some of the GOP members who lost their races and criticizing them. And yeah, I think that was very unpresidential of him, and I don't think that was a good thing for him to do at all. Also, I want to add that his rhetoric by calling the press the enemy of the people, I think is harmful and it doesn't help anybody. And he actually called CNN right there to Jim Acosta's face the enemy of the people. So I don't think that helps out anything either. So there definitely has to be work on the media's behalf to help bring the country together, and there also has to be work on the president's behalf to bring the country together. Although I do understand what he's saying and what he means when he says the press are the enemy of the people. And the reason he says that is because of what they tried to do at this press conference. They brought up the whole white nationalist thing as well. Later on, a reporter from PBS News actually said, well, don't you think that you called yourself a nationalist? Don't you think that empowers white nationalists? And then President Trump said, well, that's racist. You're calling me a racist, and I never claimed to be a white nationalist. And then he just basically went on to state that, I'm for our country, I'm for the world as well, but I'm more so for our country. And if our country can help out other parts of the world, then we'll do that. And that's kind of what he meant by a nationalist, is just trying to be true to his country, the United States of America, and as he should be. However, I think a better word for that would be patriotic, but I'm not here to tell President Trump what words to use and not use. I understand what he meant by nationalist. However, people on the left took it in a negative way, which I don't understand, but hey, it is what it is, and that's what happened with Jim Acosta there. And I just want to add that had this been in the Obama administration and for instance, Fox News reporter asked at the time President Obama a question, and then as Obama stated, nope, you're finished, and then pushed off a White House aide, I guarantee you the narrative would be completely different. Because now everybody in the left-wing media is coming out in support of Jim Acosta, saying, Trump was a bully, and saying that what he did with April Ryan, who stood up and was speaking out of turn, essentially was rude, and telling her to sit down was demeaning. All these things do not help because they're twisting up the whole reality of what's going on. Because what really happened is that they try to control the press conference and Q&A and drowned out all the other reporters. That is literally what they were trying to do there. I mean, Jim Acosta even stood up in the middle of another journalist from NBC who was trying to ask President Trump a question. Jim Acosta got up and interrupted him to continue asking his questions. So the media isn't helping the tension in the country at all. But I think this was a pretty funny thing that happened. I think President Trump handled it well. And yeah, so there's a lot of talk going on with that, especially on Twitter. And speaking about Twitter, we're going to head that way now to cover some of the things that were said by some left-wing organizations. For instance, the Women's March. They retweeted from somebody on Twitter who stated this was the voting demographic for the GOP candidates, and also the GOP candidates for governor, and also the Senate and the Democratic GOP candidates, and the governor candidates for the Democrats, and the Senate Democrats who are running. And it tweeted out these demographics and percentage on, and it said, so white women voted 76% for Brian Kemp, who is running and won the election in Georgia for the governorship. He's a Republican. 59% for Ted Cruz, who won the Senate race in Texas, and 51% for DeSantis, who won the Florida governorship and is also GOP. And then this person states, black women voted 95% for Beto O'Rourke, who is challenging Ted Cruz as the Democrat in Texas. And then 97% of black women voted for Stacey Abrams, who was the Democrat candidate for the governorship in Georgia. And 82% for Andrew Gillum, who was the nominee for the Democrats in the Florida governorship. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because Women's March tweeted out the following. There needs to be accountability and an honest reckoning. There's a lot of work to do, white women. A lot of learning, a lot of growing. We want to do it with you. Stay tuned. What in the hell? And yet President Trump is the only one spewing out divisive rhetoric, you know. President Trump is the only racist here, but you have Women's March, who is verified on Twitter. This has over 1,000 retweets and about 5,000 likes right now on Twitter. And they're telling white women they have a lot of learning to do and a lot of growing to do because they supported Republican candidates. Oh my God, it's the end of the world. Women are supporting Republicans and they're white. Oh my God. So yeah, the left had a freaking breakdown over that and will not let that go. As a matter of fact, there was another individual whose name is Trevor who tweeted out that black women voted 95% for Beto. White women did what white women do, and what he was implying is vote for Republican, Ted Cruz. But this is the same guy, mind you, this is the same guy who tweeted out back in April 5th, 2010, the following. Got cut off in traffic by a Jew, WWHD, question mark, parentheses, what would Hitler do? Okay, that's not all that he tweeted. Let's see. He also has some other anti-Semitic things that he tweeted back in 2010. So January 7th, 2010. How come no one ever channels their inner Hitler anymore? What the hell? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, we're not done yet. This is January. Oh, no, same thing. Let's see here. So then we have another one. And it says, happy 122nd birthday, Hitler. It's a good thing you're not around to see how much you motivated the Jewish community to run everything. This is April 20th, 2011, and he's verified on Twitter. His name is Trevor, and he's spewing out this anti-Semitism. But let's remember, the only people who can be racist and anti-Semitic and homophobic and misogynist are Republicans. Do not forget that. Don't forget that. And remember, the Democrats, the leftists, are the party of inclusion. They want to make sure that everybody feels welcomed, unless you're a white woman or a white male, and unless you vote Republican. Those are the only disqualifiers of being included into, their acceptance, essentially. So basically, don't think differently than Democrats, and you will be all good to go in the media. As long as you say nothing bad about a Democrat, you can say racist things, you can say anti-Semitic things, it doesn't matter. Nobody will care. That's the fact. And it's very sad that we see that. But that's what's going on Twitter right now. And now, switching up pace a little bit, we'll be covering what's going on in the midterm elections as of right now. So in the Senate, the Republicans will maintain control. Right now they have 51 seats, and Democrats have 42. As of right now, Republicans have picked up 2 seats in the Senate, and Democrats have lost 2 seats in the Senate. Now, there are also a couple races still going on, and those races are in Arizona, where McSally, who is the Republican, actually has a lead over the Democratic candidate just by a little over 1%. But it does seem that she will, win Arizona, which will then mean Republicans will win Arizona, which then means Republicans win 53 seats. They will have 52 seats in the Senate, picking up 3 seats in total. Also, in Florida, former governor of Florida, Rick Scott, is running against Bill Nelson, who's the Democrat incumbent, and he has a lead of just 0.3%. Now, Bill Nelson has called for a recount, and he can do that technically because if it's anything under 0.5%, there's going to be a recount. However, it does look like Rick Scott is going to pick up that seat as well. I don't see why he wouldn't, being that the polls are already in, but they want to do the recount, so we'll see how that goes. And if he wins, that means Republicans pick up 4 seats in the Senate, which is huge. Now, in Maine, it's a different story. That was actually the other race that was going on, but it looks like Maine has went to the Democratic candidate over there. And then over in Mississippi, there's another tight race going on with Hyde Smith, who's the Republican challenger over there, and she is up against the Democratic candidate, 41.4%, and the Democratic candidate has 40.6%. So a close race in Mississippi, close race in Florida, close race in Arizona. And if Republicans pick all those seats up, they picked up 5 seats in the Senate, which is huge, which is really huge, and will definitely help them out and give them the cushion they need to, make sure things like, when they wanted to repeal Obamacare and replace it, they will definitely have the votes to do that in the Senate. Also, they won't have any issues with their judicial appointees or any presidential appointees for that matter. And this, if Democrats really wanted to try to push articles of impeachment through the House and they get past the House with a majority, even if a 51 majority for Republicans, there's no way that they're going to vote to impeach President Trump. There's just no way. And like I stated yesterday, that the only thing they could do to try to coerce Republicans into impeaching Trump is trying to get the nation riled up and destroy his character and enforce mob rule and try to just strong-arm Republicans into voting for articles of impeachment, which won't happen because guess what? The 4 senators that voted against Brett Kavanaugh's nomination were actually outed. Were outed. Yeah, and they were all Democrats. So, and the reason they were outed is because of the obvious political stunt it was. So, that's where we're at right now with the midterms. Democrats win the House. Republicans keep the Senate. And I think Republicans won overall with the number of governorships they picked up as well. So that's it for today's news. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you all have a wonderful day. And we'll see you again tomorrow. Peace.